Hey guys, welcome to the most recent episode of She Knows Arsenal. It's a female-led discussion about the Arsenal, and my name is Jessica, and you can follow me at It's Jessinho on Twitter. Today, my guest and I are going to be tackling one of the biggest topics right now about Arsenal, and that's our squad building. And specifically, we're going to be kind of explaining what it is and why we're so bad at it and how we can get better in the future. Let's get started. Hey, you guys. So here are my two guests for the show today. My first guest is Drew. Drew, say hello.
Hello.
How are you doing today?
I'm good. Just it's Monday, so it's Monday evening, very chill. No stress from the weekend building like we usually have had at past points this season. So I'm just excited to talk about something that brings me frustration a lot on Twitter because a lot of people have really skewed notions of squad building. So I'm happy for us to tackle that today. So yeah.
Awesome. And my second guest for today is going to be Tanner, the bearded Gooner. Tanner, say hello to everybody.
Hello to everybody. I should say hello. I should say it. Hi, everybody.
Yes,
Sorry.
say hello to everybody.
Coming out of the holiday season, so I have to, quoting National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation. But no, thanks for having me on, and looking forward to it. I think I know at least Drew and I, Jess, you and I haven't really talked a whole lot about this, but I know Drew and I have had some conversations, so I'm pretty excited to be on discussing something that I think Drew and I both pretty much feel the same way about. And Drew, all I'm going to say is this: why aren't we buying all of the best players in the world? Why can't we just buy all the best players, get rid of all our bad players, and just be done?
Because we're not made of ones and zeros in fantasy land.
Exactly.
Graphical video games. So that's the reason why.
Oh, that's so. I all the time I'm sitting there with my controller and I'm trying to get a Aubameyang to make a run and he's just standing there. That's why it's not working. It's not a video.
That's exactly correct. It's not a video.
So basically, like, the whole reason why I thought of doing this this particular podcast was because of the Eddie Nketiah situation. And when I was on Twitter, I just kind of felt like my point was being lost in, whether or not Nketiah is a good player or not, which is not necessarily the question at hand. Eddie Nketiah being at Arsenal is not, for me, a question of whether he's a good player. He's a professional footballer. He's a good player. But my issue with the whole scenario is, what is the future for Eddie Nketiah? And what are the repercussions of having him here for an additional 6 months? He's coming. Sorry, I lagged a little bit, you guys. But in terms of like Lacazette and Balogun, and having him for an additional 6 months leads him into the last 12 months of his deal. And usually when you get into the last 12 months of your deal, the club loses a lot of its power to negotiate. It really becomes more of the player being able to lead the discussion in terms of what they want to do with their future in regards to being with Arsenal. So, in a time where we just now replaced Vieira with Partey, 10 or so, 15 years later, we're re-signing Aubameyang on a big contract and we're not sure if it's going to work out. We're signing Willian, a 32-year-old, on big money for 3 years. What is going on with the squad building at Arsenal? And Drew, let me know, like, in your opinion, what is the biggest flaw in our squad building? Is it incompetency? Is it just being reactionary? Like, what is going on at Arsenal, and why can't we seem to build a squad for the long term?
I think it's all of that, but then you kind of have to mix in one thing that I kind of bring up, but maybe not enough, is that you have to build squads based off of where you're currently at and where you want to be. You can't build squads based off of where you used to be. That's a very big difference. For me, I kind of feel like, also, I don't know why it's just zoomed in on just me now, which is very bizarre. It's like in my face. But for me,
Hey, no pressure.
No, I was just like, what? But for me, it's very much like obviously Arsenal have, third winningest club in English football history, most FA Cups. These are all great things, but that we're not there currently. We're not, with all due respect, we're not a top 4 club right now. We're struggling to be a top 6 club right now. Really, a lot of us maybe before the season started, we would have said if we managed to somehow get 5th or 6th, we would think we'd probably be overachieving when you really think about it based off of a lot of different factors. So now that we're kind of on the outside looking in, you look at the way the squad's built out currently, you have to say that it's really a squad that a lot of the pieces are made to be successful now. A lot of the players that a lot of the fans want would come in to a club looking to be successful now. For example, when that first rumor broke out that we were interested in Sabitzer, and I was just like, he's 27 years old. He's now entering his prime. He's officially in his prime. Players like that want to go and they want to win now, unless they have a residual desire to go to a club in particular. So Partey is a different example because, you hear this a lot, but I think we can say this with some certainty that he actually grew up as an Arsenal supporter. So it's one thing if you want to play for a club, do you know what I mean? So it's different if you have no attachment to that club or no desire or no long-term goal in your career to maybe play for a particular club. So it's really hard for us to look at the market and look at all these kind of players who want to build in and go from, languishing in mid-table to winning the league next year. This is where squad building comes in. And Edu's kind of said it. He wants, 2 seasons on from this one. So 2023 is when he really wants the club to push forward with its objectives. And I think that's the correct way to do it because then you sort out the bad contractual obligations we've had historically. Ozil's off the books, Socrates is gone, Louise is gone, William will be just about gone. Both those big money contracts where we're overpaying for players who are the wrong side of 30, potential bombing as well. So for me, Arsenal's issue with everything has been an issue. We've been kind of shooting in the dark in a way, like one good player here, this player there. It's like there's never really been a cohesive plan from the ground up because and in fairness, we've also gone through essentially 3 regimes in 3 years. The end of the Wenger regime, and then Gazidis wanted to move forward. We tried to do it with Sven. That didn't work out. Then Raul got promoted, and then that didn't work out. And now we're with Edu and Arteta. So it's hard to have that nailed down direction when you have such turnover at brass level, and that's something that bigger clubs that we try to strive to be don't struggle with, but we've been struggling with that. So for me, I don't think you're going to see what we can possibly do in terms of squad building until things are finally solidified. So the hope is, I think we all have, is that we're really trying to hope like between now and the summer that Edu and Arteta and Vinay really sit down and really do have that hashed out 2 to 3 to 4 year plan. And then we start to see those things come through. So the thing I would say that's encouraging is more and more now you're seeing better links to players like Abuendia, and whether I think we should get him or not is irrelevant. He's the profile of player you want. He's 22, 23. By the time you get into your stride, he's 25, 26, and then you're ready to go on and hopefully push. Basuma's another one that we've all talked about before. Those kind of players are, players you want to help build around a core of younger players that we currently already have on the books, and they're already beginning to perform. So that's how I'll kind of open the segue into the squad building argument in terms of maybe where we can go from here. But yeah, I think just it's really hard to kind of build squads properly when you have 3 different ideas of how to do it with 3 different regimes essentially. So now hopefully if this regime kind of gets their bedrock settings into the club and they're here for a while, it'll be easier for us to kind of move forward with that. So
yeah, I definitely agree with that. Like the changing of, the different executives over time has made it really difficult for us to solidify a long-term project. And I've been kind of hard on Edu because I'm not quite sure like how I feel about him at the moment. Okay. I'm not quite sure how I feel about him at the moment. It's like in one respect, I'm like, okay, he brought in Gabrielle and Partey, and that is the direction that I would hope that we're going in. But then we also brought in Willian, and I'm not really sure it's clear where Raul's mess ends and where Edu's mess begins, or if there's even Edu mess anyway. So for me, it's just about let's kind of see what happens with the January transfer window and the summer window and see who Edu is and what does the project look like in his eyes. Because from the 2 signings of Gabriel and Party, it looks like we're going in the right direction. But, is he able to get players out? Is he able to sell players? Things like that. Those are still questions that I think need to be answered. So, yeah. And Tanner, what do you think? Do you agree with Drew that it's just like the regimes just kind of changed so many times that we were unable to kind of solidify the project? What do you think has been the flaw in our squad building in the last 15 years?
Wow. Yeah, loaded question. No, I do agree with Drew wholeheartedly on it, but I'm actually going to expand it a little bit, because even within the 3 regimes, I think what you had was differences of opinion from individual to individual. So even we had Arsene Wenger, who was such a dominant, voice in the boardroom, really, when it came to transfers. But then when we moved away from him, we got to, Raul Leahy, Sven Mislintat. I don't know how big his voice really is in all of this, but you get differing opinions from different people. So you had Unai Emery, for example, who wanted Wilfried Zaha, but then you get Raul Leahy, who goes out and says, okay, well, here, have Nicolas Pepe. So you see the difference of opinion there. So it's not only regime to regime, but it's also within the regime you have difference of opinion. And at the end of the day, when you're doing something like this, everybody has to pull in the same direction. So the communication from your manager to your technical director, director of football, whatever Edu's official title is, that communication needs to be impeccable. And, so you identify the traits that you're looking for in each position. And you then go to Edu and say, okay, this is what we're looking for. But Edu, you got to be on the same page there as well. If Edu says, no, I think we ought to play a 5-4-1, and and Mikel Arteta wants to play the 4-3-3 or 4-2-3-1, well, right off the bat, you're kind of shot in terms of where you want to be as a football club. So you got to get on the same page there. That's where it starts, and that's just kind of me expanding upon what Drew said with the the regime to regime thing. But the problem, boy, I think it's down to a lack of communication from the agreement standpoint. What are we looking for in a player? What position are we looking for? And then what are we looking for in that particular player? But then either overvaluing the youth, undervaluing the youth, getting a player that, bringing in a player at a price that player doesn't perform, but then we say, okay, well, we're not going to sell him at the cut rate price that he probably really is worth because we overpaid for him. So now we're just not going to sell him and we're going to lose him for nothing. So obviously with the contract of Aaron Ramsey running down, him walking for nothing, it's so sometimes I don't think that's the worst thing that could happen in the world, but the problems are many. The list is long. So
yeah, I definitely agree with that.
That's the short answer.
It's such a loaded question because we can name so many different things, in terms of like, okay, so what's been happening? Why haven't we been able to build a squad? I think a really important point that you made, Tanner, was the fact that everybody needs to be on the same page. And I question whether, I think that we kind of fall into the trap where we think like whatever they're telling us in the media is what's actually happening. But I tend to look at anything that the club puts out there for the most part might be PR spin. And when they were saying that Edu and Arteta were on such great terms and they really get along, based on kind of like the timeline of the last transfer window, I'm not really sure if they are on the same, on the same page. And making Arteta the manager and giving him more input on transfers when Edu is clearly trying to collect as much power as possible, kind of, it's a little like, okay, well, maybe there isn't such harmony there. Maybe they do need to get on the same page. One person wanted Thomas Partey, the other person wanted Awa. So I think moving forward, it's going to be clear whether or not Edu and Arteta really kind of vibe, because I do think that Arteta has the ear of the Cronkies. And I think if it did come down to Arteta versus Edu would go. So we'll kind of see like whether or not they're on the same page. Like Arteta needing more input on transfers doesn't give me a lot of faith that even he believes that Adu is doing the right thing. So that's something to consider. So Drew, I want you to give us a good example of like a real life, like good example of a team, a squad, whatever, a club that is good at squad building. You know, they've mastered it, you know, and just kind of let us know, like, in your opinion, what do they do that Arsenal is not doing?
It's tough because I mean I'm always going to kind of default to not Premier League examples because I feel like a lot of Premier League teams do just go out and spend the money. Not that there's anything necessarily wrong with that, because when you have funds available, the instinctual thing to do is to go spend it. So it's hard to really say that there's something wrong. It's just at that point it's a matter of if you're spending it wisely, the kind of target you're going after, that kind of thing. So I always kind of trend towards looking at Bundesliga teams, or clubs rather, as good examples. And a recent example for me would be Leverkusen, actually. And not just because they're performing quite well this year, you know, they're in the race for a top 4 finish. They're performing incredibly well, but it's kind of how they've balanced the team out in terms of, you know, the core players that they have, the young players that they've not only that they've maybe gone out and purchased for lower fees, but the ones they've brought through the academy, and then they also have a lot of players in their prime years as well. So, but this past summer is a prime example of it. So, you know, everyone knows that Havertz left for Chelsea, and they got, I don't know what 80 million euro for him, something along those lines. And they also sold Kevin Volland to Monaco. Yeah, so they cleared about 95 million euro for both those players. So instead of going out and chucking all that money to fix the problem, you know, they went out and they a shrewd bit of bids to get Patrick Schick, who was at a favorite Roma. He had a good loan spell at Leipzig, so he already had that Bundesliga adaptation already. So they got him at a really good price. So that's essentially a like-for-like change with Volland and Schick for money. And then instead of going out and trying to buy a replacement for Havertz, they brought 2 youngsters through the academy, Florian Wirtz, who everyone is now starting to come up with understanding who he is as a player. He's only 17, but he's getting regular minutes and performing quite well. And then Chen Tuchman as well. He also came through the academy. So they've replaced a high-performing central figure in the team with 2 younger players, and they've put faith in primarily Wirtz, but Tuchman's there in and around the team as well. And they've allowed that to come through because around him he has more experienced players, particularly in midfield through the spine. You know, Demirbais at the club, he's 27, so now he's in his prime years. They have Ezequiel Palacios, you know, Charles Aranguiz. Those are kind of more experienced players that, you know, give him that support. Neddy Mamiri is at the club, he's 24. Julian Baumgartlinger, he's 33 now. So he's on his final last legs, but there's a lot of experience around those younger players who will allow that'll allow them to perform. And that's something you can look at Arsenal and say we have a similar ability to do that when you have the likes of Saka and Emil Smith-Rowe coming through. Tierney to a certain extent, even though, you know, he's not under 20 years old, but he's still a young player, you know, Gabriel, a young player. And we do have good experienced players, particularly with Premier League experience at the club. So we have that, and that's kind of the balance that you strike. And then when you have a few very good young prospects and you have a few elder statesmen, and then the core of your team needs to be players who are either in their prime or pushing on their prime, maybe 24, 25 years old. And if you strike that squad balance, not just in terms of where players can play, but, you know, they're standing amongst the team, what they're able to pass down to others or where they're able to go, you know, and then once you have that, then you can look at it and say, you know, do we have like that tactical balance? That's a whole other question. But in terms of how you build the squad, it has to be balanced. If it's too front loaded with younger players, then, you know, if they all overperform, then you might have to sell a lot of them, and then you're kind of screwed at that point. Or if they all underperform, then you can say, well, we never win anything with kids, you know. Or if they're front loaded with too many veterans or players, you know, past the age of 30, then it's like, well, we have this many players to replace. You don't want to go out and try to replace 8 or 9 or 10 players within a window or two. That gets really expensive, especially if your academy isn't consistent. I'm not saying that ours isn't, I'm just saying in general. So that's why you have to have that balance. And that's why I speak a lot about the need to really have pathways for not just young players, but really looking at the squad to know where we stand with contracts, with age profiles, where we're going to be now, where we're going to be in 2 years. How you really have to go and plan that out. And if you look at this other, and obviously I'm sure they do it with clubs like Arsenal, but this is something they look at when you look at with sports with very, very deep rosters. Like the NFL is a prime example. Every preseason they have the whole board in front of them, the coaching staff, the head coach. They have the whole board of 90 some odd players there, and they literally look at the chart and say, these players are on this year with their contract left. Can we afford to bring them in? How do we replace them once they're done? How do we replace them through the draft? Those are the kind of questions that you really have to move forward and think about, especially if you want to run yourselves financially, structurally well. You have to have pathways for squad slots moving forward. So that's something that we can be better at. And again, I think there's so many Premier League clubs that have the money to just buy replacements whenever they need them. That's all well and good, but then you come up into issues if 1 year you underperform, you're not getting the revenue when, and also the players aren't happy, they want to leave. Like this is why you really have to kind of hash those things out. So.
Yeah, for sure. I think that the youth is something unique that Arsenal has that other clubs don't. We don't have the best academy, but we definitely have a better academy than the majority of the Premier League. And it's just so interesting to see, not interesting, it's kind of disappointing in a way to see kind of like, I don't want to say the deterioration, but just kind of like the level has dropped from the academy quite a bit. And looking at the way our squad is, and you see, you have 19 to 21-year-olds coming through now. But when you look at that kind of like 23 to 27-year-old range, there's nobody from the academy in there really, except for maybe Ainsley Maitland-Niles. So I'm trying to figure out like what's happened there. Like, is there a way that we could use our academy better to fill in squad positions, to give some of our youth an opportunity to play in the Premier League, get experience, and other teams can see them and we can make money from them, or they can just be good squad players for us. Like, Tanner, do you think there's a way that we can use our academy better in conjunction with our squad building to make it easier for us, as a team with not an owner that's not going to really spend that much money? Like, is there a way for us to utilize that a little bit better?
Well, like Drew said, so with the youth players, as he said, you have to have a path carved out for a good number of them. You only have 10 outfield positions on the field. So you really have theoretically 10 pathways to carve. But sometimes you just got to take a chance. Sometimes you have to see a youth player that's coming through, and Bukayo Saka was kind of that player. But when you look back on things, it hadn't really happened a lot until him with this club. So to better utilize the youth and the academy and bringing them through, whether it be to play their prime years at Arsenal, whether it be to showcase what their abilities are, and hopefully you sell them on for some money. It's a bit of a catch-22 because you want your under 23s to perform in the Premier League 2, which is basically the under 23s. I mean, there is a competition there to think of, and you want to win that. But you have to find that healthy balance of the player that's going to go out on loan, because that's just what he needs. And I will use Joe Willock, I think, as an example. I like Joe Willock. I think he's a serviceable player. But for the aspirations of Arsenal Football Club, I don't know that Joe Willock will ever be considered one of the best 11. So there's a player that could really use a loan spell somewhere. And it's tough because you only have so many positions and you only got so much time to play these players, so it's tough because it is such a win now. I mean, sports, every sport, it's win now. What have you done for me lately? And like Drew said, with money, it's just certain clubs. It's just so easy for them. Manchester City, it's just so easy for them because they print their own money. So they go out and they buy whoever they want, take the Real Madrids out of the equation, the Barcelonas, Paris, those clubs. Again, they may as well print their own money. They could pretty much buy who they want. I can't speak as intelligently as Drew on the Bundesliga, but take a look at just the club that runs the show in Germany, and that's Bayern Munich. And when you look at, they're never a club that's in the transfer market where you're hearing big time splash. Maybe once, and Drew back me up on this, or tell me I'm an idiot if you want, but maybe once every 3 years you see Bayern Munich really make a big splash in the transfer market. What do? They bring their players through. They develop their players, and they get to a point where they say, okay, this kid either is not going to make it and we're going to move him on, or we're going to give him the run out in the Bundesliga and we're going to see, what he can do. You can't. The one thing I see on Twitter and I hear from our supporters a lot is the kids aren't ready. The kids aren't ready. The kids aren't ready. But then 2 days later, it's like, but we got to play the kids. We got to play. Well, wait a minute. You just 48 hours ago, you said they weren't ready. Now you're screaming, play the kids. Well, which is it, And especially this season, that's pretty much all we've talked about was play the kids, because you got to do something different. And this season earlier would have been a brilliant time to start bringing some of these players through to see what we have. And I will circle back around to kind of your original point, and the kind of the reason we're doing this is Eddie Nketiah. Eddie is a good player. Obviously, he's a professional footballer. I'm not. So there you go. There's the comparison, But Eddie is a good player. But do I think that Eddie is top class? No, I don't. And I know I don't want to speed things up here because I think we're going to get into some of this later on. But I would sell Eddie in this window if I could. I would carve that path for Fuller and Balogun if the club truly believed that he can be what he can be. And from where I'm sitting, and I haven't seen enough of him to confidently say that, yes, he can be the leader of the attack for years to come. But you've got to give him some time. You've got to give him something to see if he can compete at this level. And if he can't, then is the loan the best option for him, or sell him and keep Eddie, So, but the youth, I'll make one more point here real quick. I know I'm being long-winded. I apologize. The other thing with the academy is this. When you bring in a head coach, and this is why, you bring in head coach, manager, you bring that person in, and in my opinion, what I would do is you figure out your system and you figure out your tactics, and that has to trickle down, because the players that are playing in the U23 games, the players that you're trying to develop, can't be playing one system, and then when they're promoted to the first team, whether it be through talent and what have you, a loan, or through injury, or whatever the case may be, they're not coming into a completely new system that and they're deer in headlights, and so yeah. Anyway, Drew, go ahead. I know you wanted to.
I meant when your thought was done. But so two quick things. So one, sure. Since you used Bayern as an example, since when they've really been able to really spend money, since when they started to really become financially solvent and get, and then the valuation go up, which is about 2007, 2008, you can count on one hand how many times they've spent 40 million euro on a player. And this is a club who is now top 4, top 5 in the world in terms of financial strength.
Yeah.
They'll look at, you can still get very good players at 40 million euro. Sometimes you do have to overspend. So they got, Lucas Hernandez cost them 80 million euro last season. They just bought Leroy Sané as another prime example. But normally they will not spend over 40 to 45 million euro on any single player. And then they'll stretch their finances out. If they have to go through another cycle, they'd rather spend 120 million euro on 3 or 4 players than 1 or 2. Because that way you have equality across the squad. You need the depth, because every single year they're expected to win the Bundesliga at bare minimum. And then really they're expected to win the Pokal, and they're expected to make the latter stages of the Champions League. Semifinals. If you don't make semifinals, it's like seen as a disaster. So so they need that squad depth. So that's for that. And another thing is you brought up is something that kind of does drive me nuts. And I think, when you hear about the fact that for a while when Emery was here and when Arteta first started, they were playing back 3, we weren't sure what was going on. But, when the under-23s and under-21s and under-19s aren't playing that, it's hard to then say we have players coming through who understand the philosophy of the club. And this is why I'm really hoping we finally can just look at Arteta and Edu and the whole tree and trickle down to say that we have something we can build as long term. Make sure Mertesacker's on page with them because he's head of the youth sector. It's really important because if you look at clubs like the Ajax of the world, you're playing that Ajax system since you're 7 years old. So there's literally zero need for players to come in and adapt to what you're trying to do, and that's why it's really important for those kind of clubs to bring in first team managers that really buy into how Ajax want to be on the pitch. And it's that way across a lot of other teams, a lot of other leagues, a lot of other clubs. You look at another example like AZ Alkmaar, who I try to talk to a lot of people about, who they fly under the radar quite a bit in terms of how they produce youth players, but they look at the unpolished diamonds who are very intelligent players. And that's how they build out their youth production is we're looking for smart players who you can always teach the technical side of the game. You really can't teach sporting IQ. It's really difficult. You can, and that's more of will players develop on their own or will they not? Right. So that's why when you find those kind of players, that fits into their philosophies, and then they want managers who kind of buy into that sort of thing. So it's important that if we can get on page with that, that's a big, big deal. And I think that's got to be really important for us moving forward as an institution. As something that even I know we can argue all day about our ownership model, but the Cronkies do have to say, it's got to be highlighted. If they're being told by Mertesacker and Edu and Arteta, it's really important that we have an identity on and off the pitch that you have to adhere to. You have to make it part of the bedrock of the club, and it helps with everything else. So,
and you have to have some stability in there as well, which is why, despite the awful run of form, I will say this, and it's kind of not on the squad building thing, but with Unai Emery and last season's really bad run of form, into November, into December, it was time for him to go. My whole thing was what I've said on my show is you never want to be the guy that follows the legend. Follow the guy that follows the legend. Unai Emery was never going to be long for this job simply because of when he came in and the circumstances of the club. But even had Arsene Wenger and Ivan Gazidis left us in a real good spot, Unai Emery was never going to be here probably 3 years, 4 tops, unless we're winning the Champions League, unless we're consistently challenging for the top of the Premier League, and obviously we just weren't there. But with Arteta, it was different because I feel like there's something that can be built here. Part of that has to do with his age. Part of it has to do with the fact that he played for this club, but the consistency has to be there. And Drew, that's absolutely brilliant because, like you said, what your role is, what your responsibilities are, at least tactically, when you're in their academy from the time you're 7 years old, and you come up and you're not, as I said before, when you hit, the senior team, you're not deer in the headlights like, wait a minute, I was doing this down there, but now you want me to do this up here, but I'm in the same position. There's no surprises, so you have to, create a foundation, like Drew said. Who are we? What kind of football do we want to play? Are we the Atletico Madrids of the world that are just going to bore you to death with defensive football and nick a goal in just every game 1-0? Are we going to play the real pretty attractive football and try to bag 4 or 5 a game, but hey, we might concede 3? Who are we? And somewhere, and that's the thing. And Drew, maybe you might disagree with me on this. I don't know. That almost can't come from Arteta or Edu. It almost has to come from above them, not quite ownership, but it almost has to come from somebody above them to say, because that person has to carry that through, because at the end of the day, Edu won't be here forever. Arteta won't be here forever. But that idea, that foundation has to stay. It has to always be there. So Steve Bold's not always going to be coaching the academy. Per Mertesacker's not always going to be in charge of it. But the same things exist. When they leave, the club remains. And the club's values, the club's just style, again, on the pitch, off the pitch, all of that, it all goes hand in hand. and it all remains. Sorry,
No,
again.
no, you're exactly right. And I know Jess can speak a lot about this because Jess and I both have a lot of playing experience. And when you play in schools and development clubs, it doesn't matter who is coaching. And that's why a lot of times coaches that rotate out will kind of almost sponsor the new person to come in, is because they know that person will carry on exactly what they were already doing, because they want to keep doing what they've been doing. So, you're 100% correct to say that someone like Ajax, there's a reason why a lot of times Ajax want to bring in former players at board level. And not just former players, but former Ajax players. If they can't get former Ajax players, they want to get at least players who are Dutch or were Dutch internationals, or they played in Eredivisie, because they want to have that same ethos constantly rotating no matter who is in charge. And that's why a lot of people have said about this, it's important to have football men on the board of a club. They don't have to be like your president doesn't have to be a football man. Your owner doesn't have to be a football man, but you do need people like the director of football, the head of the academy, and places on the board that are between the DOF and the president that understand. Bayern have football men on the board. Dortmund have football men on the board. Real Madrid, Barca, Juve, Pavel Neves, Juve's director of football. He played for the club. Massive international. We don't have that. And that's why a lot of people were calling for someone like, David O'Leary to go on the board, because he knows. He over 500 appearances for the club. He knows. Right. So, no, I agree with you. It's not going to be down to the manager or even the DOF. It's got to be the people above them who are always going to be there for 30 years, however long it is. So
carrying on, and then it gets into the board, and then what happens is it just gets into the fabric of the club.
Correct.
Yeah. We haven't had long enough to kind of build that and let that soak into what we're trying to do. So it's going to take a while. And like you guys said, it's going to surpass, Edu and Arteta. It's going to have to be something that they start, and then their legacy kind of carries on, hopefully, if it's a good legacy. So
the world of football, I will say this, and I don't want to give the club a bailout here, but the world of football really has changed a lot over the last 20 years when you think about it. And I think this club is still sort of finding their way through the new world of football, and just, the advertising, the sponsorships, the money, obviously. So I don't want to give them a bailout. You should have figured it out by now. You've had 2 decades. I've learned a lot in 20 years. But I think there is a little bit of something there as well.
Yeah. So now I kind of want to talk about, like, specifically the striker situation, just because I feel like it kind of encompasses like everything that we've spoken about. We have about 5 players that are strikers for Arsenal at the moment, where some people are blocking somebody else's path. We have somebody on a huge contract that has not been able to perform at the same level that they did last year to earn that contract. We have somebody going into the last year of their contract that's now in form, but we're, on the wrong side of 30. So in your opinion, Drew, like, what do we need to do with the strikers? Like, is the solution for the striker position, is it internal? Are we still trying to figure out what the Arsenal number 9 looks like? Who goes, who stays? What do we do with the contracts? Do we let Lacazette run his deal down? How do we work through and kind of streamline the striker position so we get the most out of it, seeing as it's kind of a mess already?
Well, I mean, I think we kind of know what the number 9 looks like, because even when he was out of form, Arteta kept playing Lacazette at 9. And when he didn't, he played Nketiah there. It wasn't really Aubameyang. I think that kind of tells you exactly the kind of striker we're going to be looking for. If we don't extend Lacazette, if we sell him, I think we'll actually look to make a move for a player. I don't think, we don't even know if Balogun's going to how long he's going to be here. We don't know what's going to happen with Muller. Muller could be a player we brought in to develop, to sell for cash, which is clubs do it all the time. That's normal. So we don't know yet, right? But I think it's clear that Aubameyang was re-signed, or extended rather, because of the things he did previously, but also because I do think ownership was afraid of fan angst if we let him go. If we sold him and let him run down his contract on a free and let him go, and I think fans wouldn't really approve. He's highly popular, so we extended him. but no, so I do think, but this is kind of also on the flip side, this goes back to squad building, and we really missed how we should have handled this. And Nketiah by now at his age, yes, he's still young, but if players by the time they're 21, going on 22, they need to be making impacts, like legitimate impacts in the first team. Even like I said, even when Lacazette wasn't in form and Nketiah wasn't really pushing him for time, that kind of tells you what you have with your hands. And yes, he scores for England. Go on.
He's only scored 12 goals in 4 years. So just to put that's not that much. That's really not that much, but I just wanted to put that out there. And 50-something appearances.
It's true. And obviously you can, with a grain of salt, you can take it because he's, I think maybe only a third of that has been as a starter. But even still, if he's not really ever displacing either of these players, and whenever he does play, what he shows is still inconsistent. A lot of fans say, oh, he still needs time. It's like clubs don't always have to put themselves in a position to hope that a player keeps developing past a certain age point. This is kind of what I mean about when you look at other clubs, and I use Ajax as another prime example, or a lot of other German clubs. It's that by the time you are 19, they'll know if you have a first-team place at the club or not. And if you don't, they keep loaning you out. And if in those 2 or 3 years, if you don't really improve and really show something in that loan period, they have to let you go on the free or they sell you. It's and I tell people, if Ajax kept every good player they had in their youth academy, they'd have a squad 90 players deep because they have that many good players that come through. But eventually, something's got to give, right? You can't keep everybody. And the majority of players that come through your academy will not make it at your club long term as a first choice player. The majority of them. Some of them will, of course, in every academy. But most of them won't. I think the players that I think have a future at this club that came through the academy, you're already looking at them. Saka and Smith Rowe. You could probably say there's hope around the Z's, there's hope around Suryan, those kind of players. But someone like Nketiah, there's nothing wrong with him. He's gotten experience in the first team. He's made almost 60 appearances for Arsenal. It can be one of those things where, it sucks that he didn't pan out, but he deserves to go be first choice somewhere else. And we can also get financial restitution for that. There's nothing wrong with that, right? So I think that should have been the first thing. And then because you should have been thinking about what's going to happen with Balogun. You shouldn't have been waiting this long. And it's also kind of why I wonder, we were thankful to have Oba and Lacazette. Their original deals were structured so one was going to end right before the other one, if memory serves, right? So yeah, because Obas would have ended after this season if we didn't extend him, and Lacazette ends the season after. So it would have been one and then the next one. And then that would have given those 2.5 or 3 years for Balogun to really kind of work himself in. And if he was ready for first team football, then we don't have to buy anybody. And if he wasn't, then we could go out and buy somebody. So, but now we're getting to the point where he thinks he's ready for minutes. And he has no pathway because we're not selling Nketiah because we're persisting there. So all of a sudden you have another situation where we may have to let another young player go. But on the flip side, if he thinks he's ready before the management does, then, it's not our problem. Management can make a decision on their own. But again, I just kind of feel like it's just again, another example of we might be scrambling, right? If Nketiah gets sold this window, which I think he should, we need the funding anyway, because, Lord knows what's going on with that, right? So we could use the extra cash in pocket because we might have a scenario where we have to dip in the summer. We might not get a lot of money if we don't get Europe. Who knows what's going on with COVID? It's clear fans aren't coming back anytime soon. So sometimes you have to just kind of just jettison a player and cut it loose and let it go. So yeah, it's just weird. It's a weird one for me. It's a little bit frustrating because there was a lot of options we could have used or utilized rather. We never really did. So. Yeah, I don't know. So yeah,
I think we just again there's no decisive decision making at Arsenal, and now we're in a situation where our options are our options are less and less and less the longer we let things fester, and we never put ourselves in a position where we're the person we're never guiding the scenario. We always get to a scenario where the player has more negotiating power. They're telling us what they want to do. And I think that just puts us in a really precarious, situation moving forward. The way I view this situation is we're in danger of losing 3 strikers for free. 3 of them, one right after another. Balogun first, and Nketiah and Lacazette. All of them will leave for free because I have no faith that when we get to the summertime, we'll be able to figure out how to sell Lacazette or Nketiah when they're at like a year left in their deal. Once they get to a year left, your power in that situation diminishes because they know they can sit on their deal and get something better at the end of it. So it's so frustrating because we're talking about center forward and we still haven't even gotten to Martinelli and Aubameyang, who are they are both center forwards. They can play off wide, but they're both by trade center forwards that can play off of the left. So we have 2, they're not really wide players in the traditional sense, so we have 5 strikers there. Aubameyang, I still think he serves a purpose in the squad. I can be kind of hard on Aubameyang, but I do think he still has a role to play. But I also think that if Martinelli is fit, we need to use him as much as possible because he's not the type of youth that you give him 10 games this season, 15 games the next season. He's ready to play now. So if he's fit, part of me does feel like off of the left-hand side, Martinelli should be playing. But did Aubameyang sign a 3-year deal on however much money he's on to sit behind Martinelli? It's just the striker scenario is so convoluted to me, and it doesn't really seem like we're going to get the better side of any of these deals. So it's just frustrating for me. And what I would like to see is for us to sell Nketiah now, regardless to if Balogun resigns or not.
Well, and you have to ask the question too, because I just saw a report today. And for those watching, it's Monday actually right now. So, but I saw a report today that Arteta said we're not selling Eddie Nketiah this transfer window. So if you're not selling Eddie Nketiah this transfer window, then to me that I'm now going on the assumption that they're going to let Flaw walk for free. That's Flaw Balogun walk for free. I think the writing is on the wall in that situation where I just don't think he wants to be here. I think he sees his path is blocked. You give Aubameyang a 3-year contract. So when is he realistically going to get playing time? Which I don't 100% agree with. I would have much rather seen what we have in this kid than let him walk, because you're exactly right. Then we're going to lose. So we're going to lose him for free this summer. We're going to lose Eddie we're going to lose Eddie and Lacazette the following summer. So, sell one of them and explain. Again, it comes back to communication, but then explain to Balogun what is going on here, and look, you're going to get your runouts against, the lesser cup opponents and, in the group stage of, if we're back in Europe again and it's Europa League, maybe you get a shout in the group stages, and you get a start. Maybe you get a start against, Brighton's a bad example because of our recent history with them, but you know what I mean? The teams in the lower part of the table, and you say, okay, we're at home, we should win this game. We're going to give you, you're going to get the start, a little bit of squad rotation, especially, the time of year we're just coming out of with the compacted schedule. So it just seems like there's no communication there, and nobody really wanted to step up to the plate inside the club and say, this is what we're doing. We have to communicate with these agents, with these players, and tell them what the plan is. And there's just been no plan. So Balogun it sucks. It really sucks because that whole situation was happening between Arsene Wenger leaving, Unai Emery coming in, Unai Emery leaving, and now Mikel Arteta being here. So it's like there were so many, I hate to say, bigger things going on at the club at the time. I think
he slipped through the cracks.
It just slipped through the cracks, but at the same time,
but whose job is that?
Exactly. There's got to be somebody's
getting paid to do that.
Yes, to say, hey guys, wait a minute. You have this situation over here that still needs dealing with. We can't lose sight of that. So, But you got to communicate better. And the striker thing is I think we're all in agreement. I think we'd all sell Eddie, keep Flaw. I actually would let Lacazette's deal run out.
I would too.
This is the kind of thing. If I may here, just real quick, and I actually said this last week, but sometimes the contract running out isn't necessarily a bad thing. And I actually think, in hindsight, it'll always be 2020. But I actually think that's what we should have done with Aubameyang. I think we should have just let him play this year out and done. And if he got and I'll say to a degree, call his bluff. Now, if he gets an offer and he wants to sign it, great, fantastic. But I'd communicate with him and his agent and say, here's what we're going to do, fellas. We're going to let the contract run down. If you get a pre-contract offer in January, we would respectfully ask that you come to us and let us know what that is and give us a chance to match. And let the club make a decision at that point to say, or that valuable to us, we'll match it. Or you're out of our price range at this point. We're going to go in another direction. And I don't think there's anything at all wrong with that, because with this, you have three choices. You can give them the extension, which we did, and for a year too long, in my opinion. You can try to sell them, which to a degree is cutting off your nose to spite your face. Or you just let the deal run down. Just let the deal run out. You can't always sell the player with a year left on his deal. Sometimes you just have to bite the bullet, and the contract is going to run out. You say, okay, we invested in this player, and hopefully the investment, you got a return on it. You got a trophy out of it, which, I mean, with Aubameyang, we did. We invested in him initially, and we got an FA Cup out of the deal and a Community Shield. Take that for what it's worth. I know some people don't value it, but I do. And it's one more trophy to add to put up in the museum. So, but letting the contract run out, like I said, is to me is not always a bad thing. And I think that mostly depends on the age of the player.
Yeah.
So I could take this in a whole different direction, but I don't.
You could, because you're going down the route of like free agency talk about.
Well, and that's kind of what it's starting to, and I don't want to, and that's not necessarily because that really doesn't exist in European football. And I'm not advocating for that. Simply saying that I think if you get into a pattern where you constantly want to turn these players over, and Drew, you and I had talked about this before, where I would love to see a situation where we have a best 9, maybe a best 10, where every summer, not even every summer, we're looking at, okay, what's the one position that we can improve this year? And again, it goes back to Bayern Munich, where not only do they not spend a ton of money on one player in every window, but they're not even in the transfer market that heavily every single window. They have their squad, and they know what they're doing, and they have their best 8, 9, 10. So they're really only having to go into the market and say, okay, we're going to bring this player into one position, and then you're just rounding out the depth of your squad from there. So, sorry, I don't want to bogart the show here. So.
My only kind of point on that is the only way to get there is to not be reactionary, and Arsenal is reactionary FC. Everything that we do in the transfer window is an effect of, something that we were incompetent at, something that we didn't look at, something that slipped through the cracks, a scenario that we let get out of control. So until we get to the point where we have caught up, we have our starting 11, we have a balanced squad, the academy is taken care of, then we can go. And the beauty of being in the scenario where you don't have to be in the market is that things show up for you that you can take advantage of that other teams can't. It's like when you're not looking for something, it shows up. Whereas when you're looking really hard, you can't find it. And that's what the scenario that we're in all the time is. We need something like right now, we need a creative midfielder. Emile Smith-Rowe is doing well, and I don't want anybody to block his path, but at the same time, he's not physically up to being able to play day in and day out. So if we had been in a scenario where we had everything kind of taken care of and we went into this January transfer window, I'm telling you, something would show up. But because we're so desperate, the options are Draxler, The options are Eriksson. The options are Isco. And quite frankly, we wouldn't be in this situation anyway if we had a plan to move on Ozil a long time ago, and we had kind of, had a plan. But now he's not in the picture. We're kind of bringing up a 19-year-old, and we know we need somebody in that good age, but they're not available. So my only point of saying that was that, like, until we get to the point where our squad is more balanced, we're always going to be in that situation where every single window we're desperate looking for something, and the options that we have are not good.
But sometimes that desperation is our fault, and I agree, but only to a certain extent. I feel like we did have a plan. The plan was to have Mesut Ozil be a part of this team. The plan wasn't for that to not come off the way it's not come off. And obviously you can look at the money spent as a stick to beat him with, no matter what kind of side of the aisle you fall on with a debate. But the issue is that when we extended him, he was still viewed as a player who can and should be key for the club moving forward for however many more years until that deal runs out.
But why do we only have one? Like, you see what I'm saying? Like, we put ourselves in a situation where if he doesn't perform, everything kind of falls apart. Like, he was our one creative midfielder. We could have brought in somebody who he was like, what, 20? How old was he when we
28 or 29?
28.
At that point, we should have had somebody coming up through the academy, or somebody that we brought in. So Smith Rowe would already have somebody else there to cover him. We could have easily brought him in without pressure. That's what I'm saying. Like, we just, even if it wasn't, there always should be somebody a couple steps behind there, so you're not reliant on one particular person. And we do this all the time. Where we kind of put every egg into like one basket, and the Ozil basket, like, we've relied on that so heavily that now the gap between him, he's 31 years old, not even in the squad, and the next person in line is 19, just coming off of an injury, not quite ready to start games. There's just too many gaps.
Well, I don't disagree with that, but this is also where the academy fails, because the player that should have been the backup should have been an academy player who was 20 or 21, who was happy to be learning from him, to be his understudy, to get the Europa League minutes, to get the start in the league. We didn't have someone in that position that came through the academy really that was prepared. So Smith Rowe was ready. If he was his version now, 2 years prior, we would have been fine. And then 2 years further forward, he would be now, 21, 22 years old, really starting to come into his own, and it wouldn't have been an issue. But that's kind of where the whole structure has failed everything. Yeah. And that was the disconnect. So
to a degree, and I don't want to spend a lot of time on it, but I think there was that player. I'm not saying that he would have performed to the level that we needed him to, but unfortunately, circumstances within the club shifted his path, and that's Ainsley Maitland-Niles. Now, I'm not saying that he's a pure attacking midfielder, because I actually don't think he's a pure attacking midfielder, at least not in the sense that Smith Rowe is. I don't think his vision is quite there for that kind of a role. But Ainsley Maitland-Niles was there, and his path got shifted into basically being a fullback now, and he can't get a shout in the midfield. And I'll bang this drum until the day he retires from football, that I think Ainsley Maitland-Niles needs to get a run of games as a midfielder, because I think he's that athletic, and just there's something there with that kid, but he needs a run of games because he needs to get comfortable with doing it. And if you're not going to put him there, then at least put him out at fullback and let him do that, because I'll be honest, I mean, he's defensively, he's so athletic, he can lock down just about anybody he goes up against. Now, he's not a natural defender, so there are some things where you say, he should have done that, but those things, hopefully, if he were just playing there and doing it consistently, would come over time. But yeah, you're absolutely right. There always has to be a fail safe. There always has to be that who's next in line.
Exactly. And Ainsley's, his biggest flaw is the fact that he has too many good things.
Versatile. Yeah. It works against him. Yep.
Yeah, you have to be a specialist. Like, when you're somebody that they could see in multiple roles, it just kind of messes you up. So it's unfortunate with Ainsley. Like, he's, a victim of his own talent. per se.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
That's a great way to put it. That's traumatic. That's a great way to put it. He's a victim of his own talent.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right.
For me, what's frustrating is that that's another example of he's not getting run of games in the midfield. He's not even the second choice at right back. He's clearly the third choice because when Bayern's not fit, Cedric is playing.
Right.
He's another one you have to look on and say you might have to bite the bullet and sell him. We probably should have just sold him in the summer. We probably should have. And I understand why we maybe kept him for obvious reasons, but moving forward, I don't know if he has a future at Arsenal either. Because even if Bayern gets sold, we're already being linked to Lamptey, for example. So it's clear that he's not trusted to.
And therein we go back to what are the problems? Why has this been such a task for this club? And there's a prime example. It's like, well, we want to hold on to him because we think there's something there, but then he never gets played, so you don't know. And his contract is going to be the same thing. His contract is going to start to run down, and all of a sudden we have no power. And he's going to say, nope, I'm going to stay here until January. I'm going to see my contract out through the end of the summer, whatever. I don't even know when his contract runs out. But whenever his contract is up, he's going to run it down. He'll sign a pre-contract with somebody else, and off he goes. And I think right now you could probably get $20 million for him. Somebody out there, I think, would give you $20 million. And if that's the case, it'll break my heart. But that's the other thing. Go ahead, Jess.
That's because to me, it's like every single time we're like one of our young players is linked to a move somewhere else, something comes out that says like, that's not enough. With Eddie, we want 30 million. We're not getting 30 million for Eddie and Kadia. Like, what are you saying? You're not getting more than 15 to 20 for Ainsley Maitland-Niles, and you're not going to get more than 20 for Guendouzi. And those three players, if you move them on right now, that is a good amount of money for players that you altogether you've spent what, 8 million on Guendouzi, and the other two came from your academy. You got Nketiah from Chelsea at 15 years old.
Yeah.
Is that not good enough? Like, what are we looking for?
And that I think, and I've said this before, one of the biggest problems with this is that we believe our own hype. So we put a price tag on a player. And now we're back to the video game, Drew, where if you've played FIFA and you've gone to make a transfer, we've set a value in 30 million, and we're not willing to sell them for less. But then you literally stand on that number and you're not willing to budge at all. So you say, well, rather than sell him for what we would consider pennies on the dollar, we're just going to keep him and let it, and the contract runs down. And again, you go back to cutting off your nose to spite your face.
Yeah. It's not just that. You don't have to forget that. Like you're in a COVID market that's relatively depressed. I mean, I get that he had come with homegrown quota, so you can put a tax on it. But the reason why Brewster left Liverpool for the money that he did is because it wasn't in this market. In this market, and Nketiah, given what he's done for Arsenal and the fact that he's not even the first choice player, that he's now you have to take what you can get sometimes. And it's not like we're asking. It's not like we're settling for 5 million. 20 million is still a good chunk of change that we really could use right now. And it's funny because I was actually talking to Jess about this 2 or 3 days ago, that fans are scoffing at Norwich demanding 40 million for Buendia, yet and they're like, that's outrageous. He's not worth that. But then they're demanding 30 million for Nketiah. Wow.
Right.
That the logic doesn't exist when you compare those two. It's like I might think Buendia is overhyped to a certain level, but at least he's put in 2.5 or two very good seasons in the Championship with Norwich, and a half season last year with Norwich in the Premier League, where despite him struggling to find goals, he still performed well for the balance of the season. So how could you then say he's not worth that much? To Norwich, at least. To Norwich, he's worth 40 million, right? So you can't just say that's outrageous and then kind of say that Nketiah should be 5 million less than him. It doesn't make any sense to me. So it's kind of goes back to the whole argument of like nothing. Like we're kind of all over the shop in terms of where we should be going. That it's going to take a couple of years for things to just kind of weed out over time, and then hopefully as things weed out over time, things become more streamlined. And then within 2 or 3 years, it's running more smoothly and a bit easier, and pathways are now then clearly defined and that kind of thing. So we'll just have to see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, you guys, we're at about an hour. So now I want to go through some of the questions that some people sent in to Twitter. So the first question is from Gooner Glenn, and he's asking, what are we doing with Abba? Are we going to stick or drop? So I don't really think that this is like, this is just kind of like a general question, which is totally fine. It doesn't really have much to do with squad building at the moment, but I think I kind of said this before, that I think Aubameyang has a role to play in this team, especially with Martinelli having some injury issues. So in terms of sticking or dropping, I think it just depends on if Martinelli is fit. Like, I personally think that if Martinelli is fit, like, we have Martinelli realistically for 2 or 3 seasons. Like, Martinelli, if he stays fit, he will get attention from bigger clubs and we'll need to sell him at some point. So I don't want to waste the time that we have for Martinelli, giving that time to Aubameyang because we gave him a big contract. If you've noticed during this season, Aubameyang has lost pace. I think that you're starting to kind of see the beginning of Aubameyang looking like a 31, 32-year-old, which is perfectly fine. But usually when that happens, you give the next guy the turn. You know, and Martinelli is young, he's vibrant, really good player. So for me, it's not really a matter of dropping or sticking. It's more about using Aubameyang in a way where we can salvage, you know, his body, and giving Martinelli enough time to shine. So when the big boys do call, we can ask for as much money as possible. That's where I am with that. What do you think, Drew?
I was about to say the same thing. I think Oba has been lucky that he hasn't had a major injury in his entire career. He's gotten very, very lucky, especially for a player who relies on his pace and mobility. He got very, very lucky with that. Most players in any professional sport, it's rare that they miss time. It's rare that they miss the injury bug on some level. Most athletes at least get one major injury in their career. He hasn't had one. He's gotten very lucky. But this goes back to the point before about squad building. It's that we extended Oba's contract based off of what he did, not where he might be. That for me is the problem, because now again you're looking at another scenario where he's on big money, and if he's already starting to lose his legs, and we saw him against Newcastle, he literally pulled out of a foot race against a player who he should have comfortably be beating a year ago. 12 months ago, he would have won that foot race. I forget who it was with. Maybe Lascelles. It was in the second half. It's a prime example. So either he's now trying to extend his body himself, or he's losing 1 or 2 steps, or it's both. A lot of people on Twitter have already said they think he's been losing his pace. He's been losing out on foot races you'd normally see him win. So that could be a potential concern. But for me, I do think that, you know, you rotate him. You can easily see Oba becoming a player who he comes in as an impact sub. You give him 30, 40 minutes off the bench so he extends his legs, so he can sprint out for 30, 40 minutes where he can't really be caught against tired legs. You know, people had the same theory about Walcott later on in his career, same sort of similar thing. But again, this club has enough talent where, and I agree, I don't think we're going to be having Martinelli for long. I think Martinelli, by the time he turns 22 years old, I would be shocked if he's still here. I think he has enough. I think he has the most potential of all our young players currently. And I think if he actually can get fit, stay fit for a full season, really perform, you're looking at like the big clubs will come for him, I think. And when they do that, as you say, we need to be in the position to say, well, okay, well, you can have him for $60 million, and not like break a sweat even thinking that we're asking for too much. You know what I mean? So I think if you find a balance between how you rotate them, maybe rely on Martinelli a little bit more. If he can prove he can stay fit for a long time, let him play. You know, we don't owe Oba anything, really. I mean, thankfully, like, he was a big reason why we won the FA Cup last season. You know, his goals have helped us over the last 2 years, but we don't owe him anything. He's going to run this deal down and he will walk on a free. We're not going to be able to sell him at this point. So it's not about him anymore. It's got to be about everything else. And he has to find a role that works for us in terms of, you know, the long-term approach for the club. So, you know, I agree with everyone. She pretty much said, no, I was long-winded in my answer, but when am I never long-winded? So, but yeah.
Tanner, do you want to get in on that or?
No, I again, Drew and I are just, it's like, it's same page more often than not between he and I. And one thing that he said that I really agree with is it's not about Aubameyang anymore, because he got the contract now. He will have no resale value even after the second year. Going into that, he will have no resale value at that point. Maybe 10, 15 million at that point, because nobody.
The reason why Oko has no resale value now,
right?
Had no resale value, same exact.
Yeah, and when you give those kinds of deals, and I'm not entirely opposed to the extensions, but you have to you have to go into that extension eyes wide open, knowing that at the end of this, you're not getting anything. He's going to run this down, and that's going to be the end of it, and he's going to walk away. Now, does he get a contract somewhere else? Somebody, maybe, but I wouldn't come in and buy him for any kind of a reasonable transfer fee. I'd come in that second year and maybe and again, an impact sub, and say I'll give you 10 million for him. Then that would be it. So to Glenn's question, do you keep him up? Do you drop him? I'm of the mind that it's all about form. It's all about the team. And this is the kind of thing where another problem that this club has had is managers who aren't cutthroat. They just develop their favorites, and it can't be like that. If you're not performing and there's somebody chomping at the bit behind you, that guy's going to get a shout. It's next man up, and the standard is the standard, So that guy goes out and performs. That's it, and you don't get back in until that man gets injured or he starts to have a poor run of form, and then you get another shout. But as far as Aubameyang goes, I would right now. I think Glenn means like right now, in the here and the now. Drop him. I drop him. Lacazette has shown, and I will say this. There is not a doubt in my mind that goal, that Smith Rowe's goal, does not get scored if Alex Lacazette is not on the pitch.
Yeah.
I will take that to my grave, but that goal doesn't get scored if Lacazette is not on the pitch.
But I don't want to, because this is another topic we can go on for another 20 minutes. So I know we should avoid it. And I will not go on for 20 minutes. But you see that
timing.
This is the reason. Yeah, this is the reason why that Arteta wanted to persist with Lacazette the whole time, because he can play expansively. Same reason why Aguero has always been that center forward for City, where Jesus is there, and Jesus had a lot of hype when he came in, and people thought he was going to be a big deal, but he hasn't shown himself to be as expansive as a center forward as Aguero. So that's when Aguero is fit, he plays. It's the same reason when Lacazette is fit, even if he's not in form, he plays. He says himself, I help bring other players into the game. With Oba's very much the kind of player where it's they're there, they exist on this planet to get me goals. With Lacazette is I exist here so we can collectively find goals for everybody else. That's important in modern football, and I think that's kind of where it is. So for me, again, stick or drop, I would stay with Lacazette center forward, and when he's fit, I would start Martinelli at left wing. I honestly would, and I know that might be overstating our young players, but again, I think he's more built to play on the left than Aubameyang is. So
I will say this in terms of Martinelli's future with this club, I'll take a bit of the opposite stance. Not that I think you're wrong in terms of what he would fetch and that the big clubs aren't going to come for him. He would be if he can stay fit and he continues to progress at the rate he's progressing, he would be just about as untouchable as a player could be. You'd have to come in and blow me away with an offer for him.
Well, him and Saka, both of them would be, give me 100 million or else we're not discussing it.
The conversation is going to start.
The range of 100 million
you have to make it. You have to make it for me, and this is exactly how I would look at it. You have to give me enough money that I can go buy enough strikers where I'm not going to miss.
Yeah.
You know what I'm going to go and I'm going to buy 2 at 40 million each, and one of them's going to hit. Or I'm going to buy 3 at 30 million, and one of them is going to hit. And I'm still going to have some money left over, just in case I want to, So if he became a striker, I agree with Drew. I actually think he's more suited to the left wing. I much prefer seeing him play out there, but we haven't really seen him get a run through.
He's one of those players, though. Like he
can do both reliably.
Yeah. He's an Arteta type player where he can play in multiple positions, and that's so valuable now because players play in so many different positions.
Yep.
So, you know, Martinelli I agree with you guys. I think that he is our most talented, is probably, if he stays fit, going to go the furthest, you know, and that's saying a lot because I think Saka is up there too, but Martinelli just, he's really, really good. So
ideally that front four, Martinelli, Smith Rowe, Saka, and then my choice would be Flo Balogun leading the line. But that front four, I would absolutely, I don't even, I'd eat ranch dressing to see that front four.
What?
Stick around.
You don't like ranch? Wait, stop.
Oh my God, it's disgusting.
Go begin.
I can't extend. I don't like mayonnaise. I don't like ranch dressing. Like blue cheese is for buffalo only. Like I won't get a salad and just put blue cheese dressing on it. It's for buffalo only. That's it. I don't like creamy stuff like that. So I do not like ranch dressing.
I don't know about you.
Ranch dressing and cucumbers. In fact, I dip the cucumber in the ranch dressing to keep those four around for a long time. How about that?
Fail.
Sorry.
Don't be sorry.
We're off the rails. We're off the rails.
So the next question,
moving on,
is from Gooner Papaya. He says, well, I don't know if it's a he or not. Sorry if I assumed. You previously, this is probably for Drew then, right? You previously talked about Bayern's multi-positional players. Should we sign a creator who can play deeper like Cazorla or Ramsey to balance rotation without blocking game time?
I think it's important.
Actually, I'm going to take this one, Drew. No,
I feel like I want to take this question. But
okay, so I'll go very quickly, and then
I'm totally kidding. I'm totally kidding.
For me, this is kind of why someone like Julian Brandt for me makes sense, because he can play as a 10, and then he can also play in a central pairing, or even if you go 4-3-3, he can play with another 8 and then have a mobile body behind, like Thomas Partey. They're kind of like how City are now, how De Bruyne is now sitting deeper with, Bernardo Silva maybe, and then they have a holding player behind them. I think you might see something similar from Arteta if given the chance. I know the jury's out if he ideally wants to do a 4-3-3 or a 4-2-3-1, or 4-3-3 and 4-2-3-1 are essentially the same thing in the first place. But I do think it makes sense because you still want to have your best players in your 11 as much as possible. But if you need to change your approach for any given day and tweak things around, you can still have those same players in the system, just maybe utilized slightly differently from a tactical standpoint. So I do think signing that kind of player is important, which is why I don't know, like for me, like signing like an out and out 10, I don't think would make sense. But I do, and then I also kind of see why people would want someone like Buendia, and he can play. In theory, he can play on the middle. Some Norwich fans think he can play centrally, so I'll have to take their word for it. But he is a right winger, so if he can play 2 and 3 roles, it helps be able to rotate things while still having your best players in the 11. I think that's important, and you see that across. And Thomas Müller can play as a 10. He can play on the right. He can play as a striker. You have Kimmich, who can play as a center mid. He can play as a defensive mid. He can play as a right back. Alaba, center back, left back, defensive mid. These are, you can keep, the puzzle pieces can keep jigging around, and you still have them in the team. So yeah, it's important. I think it's something Arteta might be doing. Exactly. Yeah.
Meanwhile, I was over here doing the same thing, and then
yeah. So yeah, there you go.
Jazz hands.
And that's an interesting point, because like I know that there's some people that don't really understand why Basuma is getting so much attention from the Arsenal fan base, and I think the key to that is that we won't just need a Basuma. We will also need a player that could play deeper, that's more of a creator. And that's where squad building really becomes important, because for new managers, they need to be able to switch their tactics and their formations. So if you played with Basuma, he can sit alone and Thomas can go, or Thomas can play and Basuma's out. You can have somebody like a Julian Brandt and, he can play with Smith Rowe and Basuma. It gives you options when you have different profiles that really complement each other. So Basuma, although he's more defensive and people, think that Thomas Partey can play as a CDM, which he can, having another player of a profile that has the athletic, ability to move about the pitch, but also has, defensive, attributes and stuff like that. It's important to have players with different profiles that complement each other. So bringing in a Basuma doesn't necessarily mean that we won't have two creative players in the midfield. We still can, but it just depends on who we're playing, what we're trying to do within that game, what the tactics look like. So ideally, I would like to see a Basuma come in and a Brandt come in, or somebody who can play a little bit deeper, like a Carzola type of role, so that we have options. Right now, we don't have options. We're, square pegs and round holes type of thing. Like we're just trying to piecemeal it together. But I think long term, we will need both types of players.
I think ideally you want that defensive midfielder, the CDM. Then you want your proverbial box to box, the guy that's going to link the defense to the attack. But then you want that creative playmaker and again the proverbial number 10 role. The guy that can sort of unlock the gate, so to speak. With Basuma, and I don't want to spend too long on this, but I love what he could potentially bring. My biggest question would be, can he and Partey play together? Can Basuma be that defensive minded where he really just lags back? And
that's what he does.
But I think he and Partey are very similar in profile and in what they're really good at. But Partey, I see a lot of people like, he's the CDM.
He's not.
It's not that I don't think he can do it. I think he can, but I think if you limit him to that role, you're really taking away what he does that makes him shine. You know what I mean? So I that's why I'll say this, and I don't want to get off on another thing, but I'll just make the comment and I'll let you two do what you will. I'm not horribly opposed. I would actually like to see Lucas Torreira brought back into this team, to see him play as the defensive mid with Thomas Partey as that link from defense. Because if you could get Lucas Torreira's confidence back, the first half of the 2018-19 season when he was brought in after that World Cup, he was an absolute just ball hawk. That dude he was everywhere where he should have been, winning the ball. And then all of a sudden, Jess, you said it brilliantly, square peg meet round hole. And all of a sudden we wanted him to go up into the stands and sell hot dogs. Like, what? Leave him. What are you doing? So
the thing with Torreira though, is that like, the more I thought about it, because you brought this up, I think on the after party or one time we were talking about it, and I kept thinking about it, and I was like, you know what? I honestly feel like, and the game changes really quickly. I feel like he's almost, the game has kind of passed him by. The quickness of the Premier League, it's like this season, it's like they took the dial and they just turned it up just a little bit more, and I think that although he's not completely like unathletic, I just think in that position, we need to really turn it up a notch. Like we need that person to be able to get about the pitch. We need somebody with a little physical, and even though Torreira, he's succeeded in spite of his physical, being so
say he's not a big boy. He's not a big boy. He's like 5'6".
He's succeeded like in spite of that. But in my opinion, I just think the way the league is going, we're going to need somebody a little bit more dynamic in that position, so I like him and I would actually prefer to see him over El Neni. But the way that the league is going, I just think it's going to get even more physical. Track meet.
Need an upgrade on both.
It's a basketball. It's a basketball game now, and if you can't participate in the basketball game, you won't succeed. So.
Yeah. Only thing I will say, and then we can move on, is that we've never seen Torreira play in a 4-3-3 because he played 4-3-3 at Semp and he plays 4-3-3 for Uruguay, and he's actually, oh my God, my alarm! Time to wake up. Yeah, seriously. He's actually the actual holding midfielder in those when he's at Samp and for Uruguay. We've never seen him that for Arsenal. He's always been a part of a pair. It was usually next to Xhaka, and that's a whole other responsibility discussion. That's a whole other podcast, really. So you could theorize that if you had him in the hole behind Partey and someone like, say, Smith Rowe as an example, in a 4-3-3, he's reduced responsibilities because Partey is the primary mobile shuttle ball winner that you would have. And then you would have ESR as the mobile creator in front of him. And then his simple job would be win the ball and get it to one of those two, or then spray it out to maybe Tierney making a run or whatever have you. Because if Fabinho can withstand the Premier League's pressure and needs for athleticism, then I think Torreira can as well. So that'd be the only flip. But if that's not how we're going to persist on the tactics page moving forward, then there's no reason to keep it. Again, same thing, identity, what we actually need.
Yeah. So, if we can move him on for 20 million to somebody, if you're not going to play him, then do it. Yeah.
There's also the soft factors of Torreira and his, he didn't really get on in London the way, so there's also that too. So the next question, we kind of answered it. We kind of, addressed some of it, but Jerry I hope that's what it is.
_I_is, I suppose.
Yeah, I think that's what it is.
So he wanted to know about like the center of the pitch, in terms of the center forward. I think we kind of talked about that a little bit. We can all kind of go around and say who we'd like to see. I know Tanner said he'd like to see Balogun. I have some other thoughts on that. And the center midfielder, I think we just talked about that, but I think the main portion of this that I really want to talk about is also the center backs. He wanted to know who are the 4 or 5 center backs, pretty much like, that we would have within the squad, I guess, if we were building the squad, and how would we make it good enough for top 4 and beyond. So I guess I'll just kind of start off with the center forward. For me, that player does not exist within who we have at the moment, especially because Lacazette's on the wrong side of 30. And I do think that the player that we're going to be looking for is going to be similar to him. But what I would like to see is that person to be a little bit taller and have more heading ability, because of the type of crosses that Tierney's putting in. He's literally being robbed of assists, because the 2 strikers that we have in there are not great with their heads. So for me, if I had to choose somebody just right off the top of my head who I'd like to replace Lacazette, would be Odsonne Edouard from Celtic. So what do you think, Drew?
I was a good under the radar type player, but I didn't really think about this. I'd be sat here for an hour trying to think of the perfect player that I would want to bring in. Edouard, I think it's a good shout, though. I think if you're looking at players with the right age profile and ones that we could afford, and the fact that Tierney came in from Celtic and has proved that he can stand the test of the Premier League, Edouard's a good shot for that. He's also French. Arsenal does have a French pull. We still do. We probably always will. Thank you, Arsene Wenger, for that. So I think he should be considered, and he'd be affordable. That's the biggest thing. I know the fans are now talking about Patson Daka. Like I can't even get on this discussion as well, but I wouldn't go for that. I think, but you could also find like diamonds in the rough. Like, for example, Stuttgart have 1 or 2 players who fit the bill for center forwards that we could use. They might not be there just yet, but in 2 years, they might be. There's a lot of players out there who could fill a job, but I think the drawback, what I would say, and it's the reason why I think we actually signed Oba in the first place a long time ago, is because Arsenal has such a historic connection with its center forward position. Look who we've had there, Henri Bergkamp when he first came, Wright, Van Persie, and I think that's the real reason why fans never took to Giroud, because we got here. When he came to the club, he was touted in France. He came from Montpellier. He scored 20 goals that year beforehand, but he was never a real big draw to the club. And I think a lot of the fans, in a way, got spoiled because of the type of center forwards that we've had here historically. And I think that's for the same reason fans were kind of wishy-washy about Lacazette when we first bought him too, but the fans unequivocally, the world exploded when we bought up. We followed the man's plane from Dortmund, for crying out loud. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, that's the level of expectation I think the fans have when you think about who your center forward is for Arsenal Football Club. So it's going to be tricky. That's just a center forward question. We don't have to go with the center midfield question for me, but I do want to kind of bring up the third part of that. And thanks, Jerry, by the way. Jerry always talks on Twitter with all of us, so I really appreciate him putting a question in about the center backs. This is tricky for me because there's all this talk recently about, Rob's contract extension, what we think that means. I think it's time that fans understand that there might be a situation where Arteta genuinely rates Holding as a first choice option moving forward, not just as we're extending him because we're going to keep him as that number 2 right center back. I think he's in the process of proving to Arteta that I'm your man to go moving forward with, because he's now performed well with both Pablo Mari and with Gabriel. He's performed with both of them. So there's a scenario in there that we might have to think about Rob actually being the first choice. And then same thing, it goes back to kind of maybe the whole spoiled argument is that if you look at the Premier League, Liverpool is the only club in Premier League right now that can say they have a truly elite center back in Virgil van Dijk. No other club has an elite center back right now. Not even City. City have overspent. Stones has been very good. They've gotten Laporte has been very good, but Laporte has not been as good as people expected him to be coming from Bilbao. United do not have an elite center back. They had Rio Vidic was iconic, but they don't have. Chelsea, same thing. They're struggling at the minute for center backs. We were struggling, but the Gabriel business I think was brilliant. Mari is proving himself to be very solid as a second option for that. But Holding is a player who you can build around him. If you partner him with Gabriel, he works. He understands the club, the system. He gets on with his teammates. He's got quiet leadership. He excels in maybe ways that he can sit while Gabriel roams a bit more and is more mobile. He's working. And fans forget, look at the numbers. We have the 4th best defensive record in the Premier League. And Holding's been the first choice at right center back the entire time this season. So how bad could he really be? So I think if you're looking at Holding, you're looking at Mari, you're looking at Gabriel, those 3 should be the core 3 center backs. And then for 4th and 5th choice, we don't know. We don't know what's going to happen with Saliba. For all we know, he could get on at Nice quite well, but then use that as motivation to say, either you're going to start me this season or I want to leave. We don't know what's going to happen with that yet. Or he might come back and be fine. Chambers, I think the jury's still up. I think Chambers is a good 4th or 5th option in your depth chart because he can play right center back. He can play in the back 3. He can play at right back if you need to residually. So he's that good squad player that you need for depth that can play 2 or 3 roles. He can even play defensive mid. So I would keep him as well.
I think that player of the year at defensive mid. So
yeah, I think he's decent. Yeah, with the question, the only question for me in that 5 would be what's going to happen with Saliba, because we don't know. We could be looking at a scenario where we have to sell him because he wants to go be first choice somewhere immediately, especially after a good loan spell. He might want regular minutes all the time. If we're not going to give him that, he might want to leave.
I feel like that might be, Saliba feels like he's ready, So I don't even count him anymore when I think about our center backs because it's just so up in the air with him, So like you said, the 3, Marie, Holding, and Gabrielle. And then from there, it just depends. I feel like, we could look at Ballard or McGuinness and easily fill that.
The 4th and 5th are depth options.
Yeah. Right. Or, I just don't think center back is even an emergency for us anymore. I really think that we can kind of table that for a little while. And when we get to the point where we actually want to maybe challenge or something, then maybe we could look to upgrade on a Holding. But I just think that we're convinced that we need the best in every single position, and we definitely don't. We need the best partnerships and the best chemistry on the pitch, So Holding is fine to me. He's never going to be great, but like you said, when you look around the Premier League, there's nobody really top level. So I'm not really pressed about center back. What do you think, Tanner?
So just to piggyback off what you just said, one of the things with a center back is if you the same thing as a defensive mid, if you don't get talked about, if your name isn't being mentioned in the newspapers, in the post game shows and the highlight shows, to me, that means you did your job. Mm-hmm. So that's just, you don't talk about the bad. And I feel like Rob Holding and Callum Chambers both kind of get a bit of a bad rap. And I've heard I'm sorry it didn't cost $50 million or whatever it was that Wenger said when he bought Holding. But the fact is, man, just be solid. Just do your job. And I think Rob Holding, for the most part, does his job. I'm trying to continue forward and persevere through the camera glitch. But at any rate, I like the contract extension for Holding. I think that's a good bit of business. If you're going to upgrade on him, that's 2 years down the road. I don't think you need it. If we went out this summer, it's not going to happen this month. But if we went out this summer and try to get Upamecano from Leipzig,
you had to mention it, didn't you? You couldn't go one podcast without doing it.
Whoa! That's the first I've mentioned Upamecano in a long time. I'm more a Konate guy, to be honest.
I'm done with that. I'm done with
I like Konate far more than I like.
He's raw too, though. Gabrielle and him would be really raw back there together.
But the point being, if we were to try to do something like that in the summer, that's a luxury. That's the luxury purchase that you can do because you have the money and you're pretty solid in the other areas of the pitch.
But like you just said, sorry to interrupt, but it's the Van Dijk.
You're fine.
It's the perfect Van Dijk example because Liverpool didn't go after a player like that until they were ready to push on and win something.
Right.
Legitimately.
Right. Yeah.
He was the necessary
and Allison were the
correct. Yeah. We're not there yet. So if you go out and you buy someone like Upamecano, just as an example, as much as it pains me to even discuss this, say we go out and buy him this summer, and then say 2 or 3 years from now we're finally ready for that push. He's now 25 years old. He's had 3 good seasons, arguably, and then a big club is like, well, now we want him. We're going to give you money you can for you. So then now we're back to square one. It's like you go after those players when you know for a fact that you are ready to make that next trajectory jump. We're not there yet.
At that money, unless you identify the player early. And if we were, I'm going to circle back to Odsonne Edouard up at Celtic. The longer that goes, the more expensive he becomes. Probably could have got him last year for 20 to 25 million. That price, I don't think it's doubled yet, but it's going to be close. He's going to be. You try to go buy him in the summer, he's going to be close to 50 million. I really, and I think, Jess, that's a great shout, by the way. I'd love to see him come in. I like the profile of the player a lot, but I think at the end of the day, he's probably going to be. That was the purchase we needed to make last summer. That was the player to bring in. But
there were so many different things that would have needed to happen in order for that to even take place. We would have needed to not bring Eddie back off of loan. We needed to sell Lacazette, so as much as I want him, timing is everything. By the time Lacazette runs his deal down, because I think he's going to run his deal down. I think that's the best option for us at this point, to just kind of push that. If he's working, there's no point in just going out and buying somebody. So by then, there'll be another striker that will have surfaced and we'll be able to. I'm not really pressed about the striker thing either. I think the main thing that we need to address is the midfield. That's it.
I mean, the midfield is the motor.
Yeah.
The thing about strikers is that no matter, as long as you highlight their best traits, there are always strikers you can buy. Always. Yeah. It's very rare that you can buy a midfielder that really defines the club, really defines what the project is. And when you find those are the ones where you have to say, well, we need that player. Partey was that player for me. That's why I preferred him over Awa as that example. But there are always going to be center forwards. There are always not everyone can develop defenders, not everyone can develop midfield, but everyone seems to be able to develop forwards. You can find them all over the planet. So.
There's a kid in France. I think he's actually on the France national team. Kylian Mbappe, I think is his name. I don't know if you guys have heard of him or not. That kid, he seems to be pretty good. I don't know. Maybe we, go out and, maybe he's a 10 to 15 million pound play. Maybe we can get that.
Maybe we can do a straight swap for Nketiah. Just straight
I'm sorry. I couldn't resist. I had to. I just.
Yeah.
I had to throw it out there.
That's
Well, I wanted to just address this one question that had come up. Gunner 09663. We have kind of covered this throughout the podcast. We talked about who's better, Encadia or Balogun. Who should we sell? I think we're all in agreement that we would sell Encadia. The Balogun ship, in my mind, has sailed. So, it's sailed. Why did that sound weird to me in my head? It's gone. Whatever, Drew. Whatever.
Sounded fine in my ear.
Whatever. So, sell Encadia. Does Chambers have a shot at earning a place? Personally, I don't know. Like, I think that Chambers could be a squad I'm not really pressed whether Chambers leaves or not, because in my mind, he's either the fifth center back or he's loaned out somewhere else. I don't think he's played enough at the moment since his injury to, where I would feel like we would get anything for him. So either he's our fourth or fifth choice center back, which I'm perfectly okay with. He's not on a lot of money. He has a good attitude. He's a solid player, or we loan him out. I don't really think that's, does anybody disagree with that or feel differently or?
No, I like Callum Chambers.
I do too.
And again, I think he's, what's funny is when you look back when Holding and Chambers were both healthy, one would come into form right as the other was coming out of it, and they always just seem to rotate. So those two are always going to be linked in my mind, and that's probably why. But I like Chambers for his versatility because, again, he played the defensive mid at Fulham when he was on loan there, and he was their player of the year. He's played it right back, and he wasn't terrible. He can play, obviously, as the right center back, and he's not terrible. I'm not really, like Jess said, I'm not really pressed about it either way. If we keep him, good, and I think he's a solid depth option, which we need. If they are inclined to sell him, I don't think he has a whole lot of value right now because A, he hasn't played, because B, he's coming back from a major injury. So with Chambers, does he earn his shot, or does he have a shot? Well, he has to be given the shot, to earning his place. So I would say right now, I think I don't think Callum Chambers is going anywhere right now. If they have a plan as to how they want to approach things in the summer window, maybe Chambers is a guy that they say, okay, we want to try to move him on. Maybe you get 10 million for him, maybe, 10 to 13. But
13 is a random number. Where'd you get 13 from?
I was going to say 12, and I was like, I'll bump it up one.
Okay.
Let's aim. Hey, let's aim high. Let's aim high.
Okay.
I think Chambers is a guy that if he's a depth rotation type player for us with his versatility, that's not the worst case scenario in my mind. So I wouldn't mind seeing him. I personally would like to see him stick around and get a chance, and let's see what he's got. So
yeah. And the last little part, and this will be just kind of like to wrap up the podcast, is do you think Arteta sticks with Emile Smith-Rowe as present starter, or do you think we buy somebody?
The answer to both questions is the same.
Okay.
I was interrupting you. I was gonna let you keep going.
Go ahead.
I'll go. The answer to both questions is the same. The answer is yes. Yes, I think Arteta will stick with Emile Smith-Rowe. At this point, how do you drop him? If you drop Emile Smith-Rowe now, you are, unless it's purely for rotation purposes, you're telling him you're still not sold on what he's doing, and he is almost I won't say single-handedly. That's a bit much. But the fact is, things turned around when he came into the lineup. That cannot be understated. Now, whether he's had a major impact to play in those games, if he was just sort of a passenger for a while, the fact is his presence on the pitch has led to 4 wins on the trot right now. So if he comes out, what kind of a message does that send to the younger players, Bukayo Saka, Martinelli, and yes, I think we buy an attacking mid because we do need cover there. So now I'm not saying buy one to replace him.
No, yeah.
I don't want to replace him. I want someone to come in that's going to push him. I know a lot of us have talked about his injury history, so we're not convinced that he can get to the end of the season unscathed. So we need somebody that's going to be able to slide in there. But then everybody wants to bring up Emi Buendia in that role, and I don't think that's the right shout at all. Not the least of which reasons is because he doesn't play through the middle. He's a right wing, as we've already said.
Or the fact that he's going to cost $40 million.
And $40 million, because if you go out and you buy a player, and Drew, I think we talked about this last week. You go out and you buy a player for $40 million, that player's your starter.
Yeah.
And you're telling the guy that you just bumped that we don't think you're good enough. So
yeah.
if I'm Emil Smith Rowe in that situation, I go to the club in the summer and I say, sell me. I'm good enough.
Somebody will take him.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. No doubt.
And I'd have to agree with you, because this is kind of, I tweeted about this. I said I would rather stay with Emil Smith Rowe and Saka instead of buying someone like a Buendia, because when your young players are proving that they can hack it and that they can perform, the answer to that question isn't then dropping them. Like that's the last, because then you'll tell them, well, then I'm just going to leave to a team that's not going to, and that would be the right choice for themselves. Like, just because a player is young doesn't mean you can't look at him and say he's performing. We're going to now make him a key part of what we're doing in the long term moving forward. It's exactly what you should be doing, not the opposite. So I don't even think we have the money to go. I mean, I think we're going to, but I don't think we should. I don't think we should buy anyone in January. I'm going to take a lot of heat for this, and quite frankly, I guess I don't necessarily care.
Do it.
If we spent all this money on Willian, just shift Willian to become his backup. Because Willian has played 10 before. He's played 10 at Chelsea. He played 10 at Shakhtar. He's played 10 for Brazil. Just make him the backup. We shouldn't be starting. We all agree he probably isn't good enough to start for us, correct? But I'd rather persist. And this is a whole other thing about Pepe is I don't know if I see a long-term future for Pepe at the club either. But if we're going to stay with him for now, and we're using Saka as right wing, have Pepe be that second player at right wing, have William be the backup at 10. That way you can rotate at least a more experienced player in when you need that rotation. It might not be ideal, but it saves us money, which we don't have a lot of right now. We just had, Jess and I were just talking the other day about Kroenke and Casey, if they've had to pump more money into the Rams thing. We all know about this because we live in the States. We're taking out loans to get us to this calendar year in the Premier League to afford costs. Like, anything we do in January, I don't think it's going to be a lot of money. If we did see a deal, I'd rather go out and loan Isco for 6 months. And I hate myself for saying that, but I
kind of hate you for saying it too. I ain't gonna lie.
I hate myself for saying that, but I'd rather do that I'd rather do that because there's not a lot of players right now you can go out and buy that are gonna maybe push Smith Rowe, or even potentially you risk them displacing him and them settling quickly. I'd rather just worry about that another time.
Yeah.
I'd rather if the choices were between getting a 10 and it's not going to happen because of the money, but getting a 10 and getting Basuma, I pick Basuma 10 out of 10 times.
Yeah.
Because I think that's more important to us right now. I think Smith Rowe will keep performing and the kids will keep performing if you get another correctly positioned and structured player with Partey in the midfield when they're both fit. I think that would be really important moving into next season, having those two prime center mids that you want to build around. Get the second piece now, settle him now, so he's ready to go at the start of next season. You don't have to worry about it at that point. That for me is more important. So,
I agree.
And then the other nice thing too about the current run of matches that we're in here is Smith Rowe. I mean, Saka was playing with a fair amount of confidence before, but Emil Smith Rowe hadn't really gotten too much of a shout. But now he comes in, and everybody's like, oh, it's Brighton, it's West Brom, it's Newcastle, blah, blah. But Chelsea was the start of that, and with I know they're having their problems right now, but Chelsea are still a talented squad, and they're going to be in the conversation for the top 6 all season long. I just don't see them. I don't see a drastic drop off coming from them. Like I said, I know they're in a poor run of form, but so that's confidence in itself. Now we go Crystal Palace, Newcastle again,
And then
Southampton, I believe.
run of 10 matches. It's like diabolically poor. It's bad.
Well,
but,
yeah. But the confidence is building
Mm-hmm.
so that when we come up against United, hopefully the confidence is there. We're brimming with it, and we go out and we put in the shift and we do the job. So that's the only point I wanted to make on Smith Rowe. But yeah, I agree. The Isco thing. Whoo, if Isco were willing to come in on loan and basically be the understudy, knowing that's his role, you're here for 6 months and you're going to be a rotation player with him, I could live with it.
Well, that's the caveat. I wouldn't bring him in to say you're here to start, because that's
right.
You have the same issue that you have.
You would never agree to that, though, because you're trying to get into the Euro squad. So,
good thing is we don't have to worry about it because he ain't going to come here.
Yeah, exactly. Just play old Willie. Willie there as the 10.
It's not a bad idea. I didn't really think about that. Just shift him over and off you go.
You could also just put, I don't know if I guess maybe you guys did say that, but just throw anybody in there. You could throw a Saka in there, throw anybody in there that can dribble.
You could put Willock there. Willock has played 10 before. In a pinch, you could put Willock. It's fine. Yeah. Like, he needs minutes anyway. If we're not going to loan him, you may as well shift him into that role regardless. So
you could slide Saka over, and then you could move. You can bring in Pepe to play on the right. Yeah. There's been talk. We've talked before, not necessarily the three of us, but there's been talk before, I should say, of Pepe playing as a 10. I don't like that idea at all. I don't think he has the vision for it.
That's some scary stuff there, Pepe.
I've heard it.
That is scary.
But I mean, it's there. I will say it's an option. If Martinelli, just real quick, not for nothing. Have either of you heard more on the injury that he picked up on Saturday in the warm-up?
He did.
Arteta said it didn't look bad. It looked bad.
But he came back and said that they did scans and it wasn't as bad as they originally thought. So we'll probably get an update on it soon.
Okay. So I hadn't heard anything since Saturday, but even if he's fit, there's another one. Can he play in that role? And I'll be honest, I actually think he can. Given what I've seen from Gabriel Martinelli, I think he could play. I think he could be serviceable in that role, if not above average.
Yeah.
In that role. We have options, and I tend to agree with Drew that maybe if we're going to do anything in this window, and I actually think this window is more about getting people out than getting people in.
Yeah.
And let's not forget too. And I know it's not going to happen, but there's a dude rotting away on the bench that might be able to slot in there as well. And I already said his name once, Ainsley Maitland-Niles.
Yeah, Niles, that's fair. Yeah.
I don't view him as that kind of a midfielder, but he's there. There's another option. So I really, I think we're covered at the 10 for now, as long as we're making a concerted effort to not block Smith Rowe's path. And I think that has to be the focus right now. So
all right, y'all. Let's end it there. We're at about almost 2 hours. So all right. Well, we're going to go ahead and get out of here. Thank you for everybody that gave us your questions. I hope that we answered them, the way that you wanted. I hope we gave you guys some good content today. And this squad building podcast was interesting to you guys. Let us know in the comments. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Drew, tell everybody where they can find you.
You can find me on Twitter at LogicLayer, so it's spelled right there. And I do some writing for Your Arsenal, for Get German Football, and I will be doing more writing for a new website coming. I'll talk more about that in like a week. But yeah, so there you go. So you can find me.
Awesome. Tanner, tell them where they can find you.
So I live in Pittsburgh. I'm not going to give out my exact address. The Bearded Gooner. I would dare say most everybody, I didn't put it on the screen down there, but it's at DA Bearded Gooner, because Twitter limits how many characters I can have in my name. So I couldn't do the Bearded Gooner. And obviously this is, it is my channel that we're doing this on. So please subscribe. I would greatly appreciate that. I know Jess would as well. Great show. Again, thanks for having me on here, you two, because this is Jess's game. I'm a guest on her show. So I had some subscribers and wanted to give her a platform to be able to do this. And so far, so good. So, but always a pleasure to get to talk to Drew. Appreciate it, man. Good footy talk. So,
yeah.
All right, you guys, I had so much fun. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and get out of here. We'll see you guys on the next one. Bye, guys.